on good public policy to understand which sectors we should not think about encouraging further investment, and which ones we should ensure that ODA is very much focused and addressing and leave no one behind. So I welcome that, and I think the report will help to shed light on that, and I think it's an important contribution to as we move forward on our discussions around impact at this week, and we ensure that if we are using development finance, that we are focusing on the impact of that, and that impact should, of course, also address the leave one, no one behind framework as well. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm going to be a bit controversial. I'm trying to understand this concept of catalytic role, and also underscoring the importance of ODA, primary objective of poverty eradication and reduction of inequality. And this concept, catalytic, actually is not a development concept. It originated from chemistry. If I remember correctly, in my high school chemistry, right? So what is a catalyst? It is a small element that, when mixed with chemicals, gives a gigantic reaction, isn't it? So generally, my take in this is the reaction we're expecting should be that of development impact. The reaction is not about mobilizing more resources. And I think the way we are applying this concept of catalytic role of aid is about how much crowding in we can do with a small amount of aid to bring in more actors. But that is not the essence of ODA. The essence of aid is to address the fundamental challenge of poverty, people living in poverty, and indeed creating enabling conditions where citizens who are living in these conditions can have a better chance of better living condition. I think for me that is the essence. And that's why you see we are challenging the notion of applying this concept to application or use of ODA in that context. And I think we need to be very careful on how we borrow concepts and put them here and there and try to make them work, because for me that has always been a challenge. Now, the second issue, I think, which is a fundamental question that was asked, has to do with where is aid best placed. I think this is a question that we also try to address during the aid effectiveness agenda. And during that time, we recognized that indeed, where there is country ownership and where there is national development plans, then that is where our support needs to go. Because people, countries where poverty exists should be the ones that also understand where the problems are and how we can solve those problems. But again, we also discovered that that was not actually the solution. That there has to be democratic ownership of national development plans, where citizens are part and parcel of the designing this plan. They are part and parcel of implementation, monitoring and evaluation, to the extent that we design institutions and structures that are able to mobilize for these aspects to take place. And that is not taking place. And I think the question that then we have to ask ourselves, in that context, how do we apply ODA? And I think the question is, then do we need to use aid to enable those conditions to exist, to the extent that governments in a way see the relevance of involving and engaging citizens in the development plans? Do we see the need for us to invest more in inclusive partnership with the citizens, or elements that promote transparency and accountability? And I think for me those are the crucial issues that we really need to grapple with, and not think about it from a provider perspective, that how best can I put my money? work with the citizens and the countries and you see what happens. I think the last issue is the tension between growth and development of poverty reduction. The questions I usually ask myself are two. One, who is producing and who is owning the means of production? Because whoever owns the means of production generates the largest amount of wealth. Then the next question is, who is distributing? And does the government have sufficient instrument or system to be able to distribute or reprogram these resources to address poverty? And that's the challenge that most developing countries are facing. Then the question is, how do we apply ODA to address this distortion that exists between the production and the distribution? And I think we are not getting there already. And I think these are some of the things that we need to address. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. We're really tight against the time now, so I wonder, of the other speakers on the panel, who else would like to respond? We might not have time for everybody. So Rafi, Leo, Ben, and Mr. Malhotra. Jason and Leo, would you like to come back to?
Yeah, just for the unique contribution of ODA, just quickly, I think. Thank you. Yeah, I was struggling. Yeah, on the unique contribution of ODA, I think it comes back to the very question of where is ODA going, because I think, and also which sector it is going. Because if you look at the recent focus, looking into the private sector focus or the blended finance, I think there is an overt focus and disproportionate focus on like infrastructure or energy or or water and sanitation, for example, And I think the focus on social service, and I think that is, that is a challenge, And the second aspect is like who decides the process of deciding on the sectors, or the financing process, the modalities. I think that is also a challenge, And so this is important because if you look at the financing and also the impact, because I was referring to the several impacts of the clean, so-called clean energy projects or the extractive industry or infrastructure financing in the indigenous territory with multiple social or environmental impact. And I think there can be real change if the communities are involved, And also there are solutions, like for example, in our context, in some of the push for extractive industry or the hydropower projects, the huge hydropower projects, and I think there are solutions, the micro hydro projects or something that can really meet the needs, energy needs of communities. And I think, but then if we can embrace or if we can focus on those, alternatives or solutions which are really viable to the needs of communities, and I think, ODA can really play a significant role in realizing the objectives of ending poverty or other objectives of development cooperation. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Leah.
Yeah, just to add that one of the unique areas that ODA is contributing to has been area of governance, particularly in countries of the South, where there's been a whole lot of governance challenges. Building institutions is one area that ODA is making efforts to support. I know that the UK, for instance, has been providing close to £50 million, in fighting corruption in a country like Nigeria. To that extent, ODA is playing some unique role. But again, it boils back to the fact that where is ODA going to? And one concern has been perhaps the issue of tide aid, where perhaps some conditions are required, for ODA to be passed on to countries that need such support by the provider countries. So it is one issue that the report, is also flagging for provider countries to also ensure that we do away with tide aid as much as we can.
Thanks very much. And finally, Ben, any final comments?
I would just add that I think it's kind of obvious, but ODA needs to be directed to the poorest. It needs to be directed to people who are the least commercially viable. for private companies, and in ways that we know works, in ways that there is demonstrated impact for. So someone needs to determine that impact. And in ways that, to reiterate something Raoul said, reflect a policy coherence framework, so reinvigorating that policy coherence when thinking and making decisions about how to direct ODA. And I think, just very quickly to add as well, it's also about having the strength as much as possible to resist temptations, calls, pressures to move ODA in other directions, either through tide aid, either through into companies that are clearly not going to improve the lives of the poorest. And not just because that's ineffective, but also potentially counterproductive. And this comes back again to something Rahul said about the vulnerability of ODA. And certainly within the UK, one of the most complained about things in the press about how ODA is spent is when it's spent on luxury hotels in low and middle income countries or gated communities. And that is often accompanied with calls to reduce aid. So it can be, in fact, counterproductive to move ODA down into these kinds of financing.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. So that concludes the sort of more substantive part of the discussion today, and I'd just really like to thank again all the panellists for the extremely rich contributions that they made. In a second, I'm going to hand over to Lynn for some more formal parts on the reality of aid side, but perhaps just a final round of applause to thank everybody again.
Thank you very much, Polly, for facilitating the session, and of course to our guests of honor, and to our contributors to the Reality of Aid report. We will be distributing copies of the report shortly, so hopefully we have brought enough copies for everyone. But just to first quickly thank all the participants, or all the guests who came to